What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to the NBA Outlet. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron, and regular on the show, Jac Manuell. Guys, how we doing for the last episode of the NBA Outlet in 2019?
New year, new me.
New year, same me.
Oh, okay. We got the different avenues here. We're going to talk to these guys in 2020 and see how they've changed or not changed. I'll just go with in between. I'll make slight changes, but mostly be the same me. But you can always find the show on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, OTGbasketball.com, and YouTube. But we have a full show today, guys. We're going to talk studs, duds, top storylines of the year, new super teams, game of the year, just all different types of fun stuff. But keep it rolling with these same Sunday shows. Instead of stud of the week, we're going to do stud of the year. Jac, get us started.
Stud of the year is Kawhi Leonard for me, Mr. Nick Fay. He won the AP Male Athlete of the Year. He led the Toronto Raptors to their first ever title, probably an unheard of feat for an organization that was in the doldrums for so long and was on the precipice. And then Kawhi Leonard essentially near single-handedly, obviously Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry were contributors too. But Kawhi Leonard, what he did was monumental in so many ways. And I think the Toronto Raptors and Kawhi Leonard, the relationship they built, obviously, load management, when we get to top storylines of 2019, that'll certainly come in. But how everything was managed allowed Kawhi Leonard to reclaim, at least at that point, the number one player in the NBA title and mantle. He was just gargantuan. He was being talked alongside Michael Jordan for his exploits throughout, not necessarily throughout the season, but when it really mattered in that postseason. Just a gargantuan 2019 from the Claw.
Yeah, so I have the same stud of the year. I picked Kawhi Leonard as well. I'm not sure. I'll be surprised if Nick didn't pick Kawhi as well.
Yeah, I went with Giannis.
You went, okay? Well, that's fair. I mean, he had arguably the biggest jump, right? But as you mentioned, Jac, for a lot of those reasons, Kawhi Leonard, forcing his way out of San Antonio, first year in a new place with new players, wins a title. We have the goodbye Philadelphia 76ers bounces in that game-winning shot of Kawhi Leonard, playing on one leg for most of the finals. Kawhi Leonard, and obviously getting the AP nod as well for Male Athlete of the Year. Kawhi Leonard was an absolute monster, got the big money to go back to his hometown, Los Angeles, and is now, rightly in the driver's seat for the Clippers.
Yeah, I also want it to be a little bit different. I went with Giannis here just because of his dominance we've seen across not only the end of the 2019 season, obviously the postseason didn't go his way, but the continued dominance in 2020, getting even better and doing it and just continuing to win. I think Giannis is taking that step where it looks like the NBA is going to be his for the next 5 to 10 years.
I was going to say that, Nick. Do you guys think that Giannis is, when we possibly reflect upon the 2020s, do you think that Giannis is going to be the player of the decade? I mean, probably a guy like Luka Doncic could be up there, Anthony Davis, these sort of guys around that sort of age 25 mark. Who knows about Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons? There's a lot of great young talent in the league, but like you mentioned, Giannis is certainly in the driver's seat.
I think Antetokounmpo probably has the best chance right now because he's got the more complete roster around him. But again, this could be. We know how fast title windows come and go. The Dallas Mavericks may get there. Say the Bucks don't close it out this year and next year. Who knows what that team looks like? Whereas the Mavericks probably are in a bigger driver's seat when Luka Doncic is 2 years from now. I mean, it's going to be interesting. But I think those two guys and probably James Harden, I think all deserve to be in the conversation for the 2020s.
I think in the 2020s, early on, it's going to be owned by Giannis. He's 25 right now, entering his prime. At least until he hits 30, I think he'll probably be considered the best player in the league, or at least top 3. Luka, I still think, needs to climb a little bit to get that consistency. But at the end of the 2020s, it'll probably be Luka, unless somebody else pops off, and that's definitely possible. I don't think we thought Giannis would be here when he was originally drafted, or even 2 or 3 years into the league.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about. I think for the most part, with the talent. I mean, I think it's the reason why we watch and salivate over this league. I remember one of my early articles for OTGbasketball.com was how fandom has changed within the NBA organization and fans in general. And now we're just drawn to the players, these personalities, their exploits on and off the court. And who knows if Zion gets himself healthy, we could see another superstar come out of the draft. I'm not going to put LaMelo Ball's name in there, but why not? Let's get some clicks for that reason. Laval will be happy with that. But I'm just excited about what could happen in the next decade ahead because, looking at the top storylines of 2019, I was even looking at the whole decade, and man, it's been an insane amount of just the change that has happened within this game and within the sport and this organization is just, it's been a whirlwind.
And no post-ups for Porzingis.
Whoa.
Well, we see post-ups in the 2020s. We'll find out soon. But getting on to dud of the year, who you rolling with, Jack?
I'm going to get salty with this. I'm going with the New York Knicks organization.
Oh, that's a good one.
Do I need to even explain my reasoning? Can I just say the New York Knicks and everyone sort of just goes, yeah, that makes sense. They're free.
You could just say James Dolan.
James Dolan, power forwards. Done.
So my dud of the year, I went slightly different, but I'm going with Dion Waiters.
Ooh,
hasn't been a very good Dion Waiters year.
Hey, he's hanging out on boats. He's having some tasty gummies, and James Johnson,
right?
It's probably let him borrow some weird Gucci whatever outfits that looks like spacesuits as well.
Yeah. Obviously last year was full of injuries. Got in great shape this summer, and we have yet to see him play a game for the Miami Heat yet in 2019. And actually, we probably won't see him play a game to end 2019. I know he was active the other night against the Pacers. Didn't play. I don't believe he played last night against the 76ers either. So Dion Waiters would be my dud of the year, especially because going into the beginning of this year and seeing all the workout videos, I was probably really high on Dion Waiters, at least becoming a valuable trade asset, and none of that has come to tuition.
Yeah, it's been a rough year for Dion Waiters on and off the court. I went with Russell Westbrook here, taking a shot at him because I know my guy Jack doesn't like him after last night.
Not at all. You do not get anywhere near the pristine man and human being that is Joe Harris. And thank you, Mr. Toy and Prince, for doing exactly what I would have done.
But actual on-court play for Russell Westbrook has substantially dropped off. We saw that at the end of the 2019 season, in the postseason. This year, it hasn't gotten any better. He went from being an MVP type player to probably not even being a top 20 player anymore. I'm interested to see where you guys put him on your top 50 that should be dropping very soon in 2020.
He's not in my top 20.
He's not in my top 20 either. I mean, he's top 30.
Yeah, I think he's top 30 for me as well.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him or where he's at the end of the season with the Houston Rockets. But away from duds, top storylines of 2019. Let's go one at a time. Jack, hit us with one first.
I think probably the biggest one, Nick, and it's changed the trajectory of the NBA, is the end of an era in Golden State.
Yep, that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest one of 2019 because if Kevin Durant stays or doesn't suffer that torn Achilles injury, the NBA landscape is completely different because who knows? Maybe the Warriors win the championship, or going to the season, it's still like, who's going to beat the Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I mean, throw in the Klay Thompson injury as well. That team, no dynasty run generally ends gracefully. It ends kind of chaotically and dramatically. And that's what happened with the Warriors. We saw a bunch of guys after deep playoff runs break down. And then that team has been refaced after Durant leaving. Obviously, no Curry and Klay. The end of an era.
Yeah, I mean, it happened so quick. Kory's right. It was just a few months, and all of a sudden, things have completely changed for the entire NBA. I think to continue on that, we have the Steph injury, we have the Klay injury, we have Kevin Durant out. Two of the top 5 players in the league. Klay probably top 15 or top 20. So just the injuries have hurt some of the NBA product in 2019.
Yeah, for sure.
Kory, what you rolling with?
So storyline for me would be, I mean, this is like a two-parter, and this would be LeBron James is washed because he, to most of last season, especially once his groin injury became an issue, we were all saying, oh, LeBron looks like he lost a step. We had that really bad loss against the Knicks, or the Lakers had a bad loss against the Knicks. That photo of Hazonia standing over a kneeling LeBron James, or defeated kneeling LeBron James. And then into this year, we have the Wash King Tour, basically, where LeBron James is saying, look who's still here. And I think that's been one of the storylines, just the fact that LeBron, despite all of these miles, all of these years, is still playing at such a high level.
He's been insane. I think it's ungodly, unheard of in terms of a 35-year-old doing this on the basketball court. I think Karl Malone obviously did it in some form or another in terms of the production, but you could make a very clear argument for LeBron James still being the best player in the game despite his age. And I think that there are a lot of factors that come into that. I think that similar to Michael Jordan, you create these narratives and make them bigger than they are to sort of have these naysayers to sort of play against. I think his son sort of performing alongside Zaire Wade, Dwayne Wade and Gabby Union's son at their new Sierra Canyon High School. I think that's invigorated him somewhat as well. I think that there's a culmination of factors that we're still seeing, the LeBron James of old, in many ways. Obviously, I think this is a new sort of style, like point LeBron in many ways. And we all know that, everyone sort of says he's closer to Magic than he ever was to Jordan. And we're really getting to see that in LA. It's almost just like, Magic, it's Showtime Lakers 2.0 to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible LeBron's doing it at the age 35. He's just a monster. And athletically, to still have what he has is really changed the perspective of people view players going later into the career. I mean, we've heard about LeBron putting $1 million into his body during the entire season just on medicine and health and things along those lines. So it's really interesting to see how long he can keep this up and how other players you kind of use this in the future to fuel them to last their careers longer.
What do you got, Nick?
Let's go with the new super teams. We've got the Lakers now with LeBron and Anthony Davis. We got the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George. And then the future, we got the Nets with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. We kind of went away from the super team of the big three to now the big two.
I mean, who doesn't love dropping a big two every now and then? Let's just put it that way. I think it's provided before the season, it seemed to be, there was parity again. But it seems to me like we've come back and taken a few steps back. It's like, well, there's only probably 3 teams now, now that we're, a third of the way into the season, a little bit past a third of the way into the season. It's like, well, there's probably only like a couple of really legitimate title teams, but we still have plenty of the season to play out. Maybe some teams like Denver and Utah can figure it out. Houston maybe makes some moves around the margins. Philly are up and down to say the least, but at their best, they are an absolute stalwart. And we know how good Milwaukee have been, and Dallas have been a major surprise too. So if you are an NBA fan of some sort, I think it's super teams drive casual fans, but for, more hardcore podcasters and NBA sort of heads, this is a more fun NBA to watch because the talent is spread out a little bit more. There's games aplenty. There's just times in the night, like, wow, which game do I actually pick here? I know when you guys always do games of the week and I jump in every now and then, sometimes it's a little bit tricky because there's just so many good games on, so much talent spread across the East and the West. And, it's a fun time to be an NBA fan.
Yeah, and I think one thing we got to touch on just to show some respect is the Raptors winning, the 2019 championship. It's not something you see where a team kind of goes all in on trades and it pays off and they win a chip. They make the risky trade for Kawhi. Obviously, he doesn't stay, but they get the championship. Then also pushing for Gasol at the deadline is something that teams have been a little bit shy to do in the past. Now moving forward, I think more teams will be willing to go all in just to get the chip for that one season.
Not to mention also having a first-year head coach in Nick Nurse.
Yes.
So the combination of all of these things coming together and working out and falling into an NBA title, very rare in the NBA. It's very unusual to have so many different pieces coming in between the beginning of the year, the deadline, having a new head coach, and everything coming together as well as it did. It was a crazy run.
I think the biggest factor that helped Nick Nurse is that he was a previous assistant coach. So a lot of his relationships with the players were still there. So now it's like, okay, we're just in a bigger role. But obviously still as a first-year head coach to win a championship, to even get to the finals is a huge accomplishment. But any other storylines you guys want to pop on?
Well, I've got a ridiculous amount, and you guys I'll list them. And
just list them, Jack. Hit us.
I'll list them. So I've got everything Melo, James Harden and the Rockets, a team we love to hate, Zionology, Stay Mellow, The Mystery of Markel, Terrific Trey and Luka Love, Farewell to Dirk, Wade and Randolph, the slow re-emergence of our Brooklyn Nets, Managing Loads and International Dominance, Jokic, Giannis, and the International Influx.
What did you mean by managing loads? I'm just kidding.
Well, I think every single person in the world, and I've spoken about it probably almost every week on JBT, and my arch nemesis Kendrick Perkins, the other K person's name who starts with K, who I have a running vendetta with. But I think there's just so much there, and we could literally spend an entire 2-hour Bill Simmons style podcast talking about all the ridiculous storylines that happen in such a short span of time. This league is a soap opera, and in a lot of ways, it's part of the reason why we love to watch it and why we love to consume it.
What was the weirdest storyline of 2019 in your eyes?
For me, it was Markelle Fultz.
I'm thinking the same thing.
That's the one that stuck out to me, and I guess maybe we're sort of, to an extent, as Nets fans, kind of reliving that with Kyrie Irving and his shoulder impingement. But obviously, he's I think there's a difference. And the main difference is Markelle Fultz was a number one draft talent. He was known to have all these skills in the world. And, in a pretty, nice draft with, a Jason Tatum, who has proven to be, a top 20, top 25 player and really stepping up with his talents with Boston. But what happened there, I don't think we'll ever know. We need a 30 for 30 Michael Jordan 10-parter or, a couple of anthology books to actually know what went on behind the scenes. He's performing, really admirably now in Orlando away from the spotlight. And obviously, full credit to the Orlando Magic organization for getting that out of Markelle. But I don't think we're ever going to see the full version of Markelle Fultz we know and could have actually had, the number one talent coming out of Washington. He was a phenom in so many ways, and now I think he's sort of the best version we could maybe hope for as an upgraded Sean Livingston type, which is somewhat sad to see. But at the end of the day, he looks happy, he looks refreshed, and at the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing.
I think my weirdest storyline, and it came in this offseason, would be the Devin Booker, Joakim Noah don't double team in pickup games.
Yeah, that was weird.
Especially just because that caught Twitter for at least a day. Twitter just couldn't get off the fact of, do you double team in pickup games? And some players even saying it's a pickup game, just play. Another guy saying, nah, you don't double team. So I thought that was probably a weird one. And then maybe, yeah, I think that's probably the weirdest one.
Do you guys double team in pickup games?
Yeah.
No. Well, no, in the sense that
if you're in the corner, I'm trapping your ass. You're gonna paint it. You're gonna.
Fair enough. I think I don't, because it's weird. I've played a lot of pickup in London when I was living over there and started with OTG, and there they play one-on-one defense. So you kind of occasionally double, but back home in the pickup that I'm playing here, we play zone. So
that is interesting.
Which is strange, and and it's quite prevalent. And I mean, I don't mind zone. I'm normally either somewhere down low, either in the middle, guarding the rim, or in the power forward position, somewhat outside of the elbow. It's a fun little conundrum of the different ways, the different dynamics of basketball. And I know that when I played a couple of times pickup in America, that it definitely is one-on-one style. It's a lot more sort of NBA style play than it is, college style players, I guess it is over here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever played zone playing pickup unless it was a group of guys I played with before and we were just trying to mess around because we couldn't stop them. But typically, you don't double team during the game. But if it's final possessions and their best player has the ball and you're trying to win, that's cool. I'm always trying to win the game.
That's my mentality. I'll do whatever I gotta do.
Watch out for Kory out there.
Kory Zaza, he's gonna be out.
I'm not gonna lie. There is, this is a somewhat sad story, but I actually hurt somebody. They broke their foot playing basketball with me.
Oh my God, Kory!
I'm not proud of it.
Describe this. We need info. Did this happen in 2019?
No. This happened in 2012. This is same decade. It's a decade injury. But we were playing a pickup game, and he was going for game point. He was going for the basket or layup, and I made contact, and he ended up landing weird and breaking his foot.
Oh, dude!
Yikes.
Not great.
I elbowed Aussie Nick in the face. I think most people that have listened to JBT before have heard it. I think it was in season 1 of the podcast, and we just sort of debuted with OTG, and we were playing on one-on-one, and he, Nick is probably 20 kilos on me, even though he's 3 or 4 inches. So I try and post up and shoot over him sometimes, but he's just a big physical dude. And I have to use my quickness a lot of the time. So I've got an okay lateral quickness for a somewhat big guy. And I just, as I'm doing the Euro, where you sort of use your elbow to go across, the elbow just goes bang and whacks him right in the nose. And I'm glad that his mum wasn't home, because she would have given me a lot of grief. Let's put it that way.
I know you did it on purpose. He said something wrong to you on the pod. But
Yeah.
getting
Man,
on,
I would do it to Kory any day of the week. Yeah, if he's out here breaking dudes' foot,
You
I'm
know,
just.
I hope I get to see you on the court one day, Jack.
this is scheduled for Jack's next appearance in the United States. We're setting up a pickup game.
Get the cameras ready. Marquee matchup.
All right, I'm starting my cardio now.
My jumper is so whack. I'm just gonna get you in the post, man. No post ups for Rick Kyle and the Dallas Mavericks. That's all I do.
I don't know if there'll be post-ups in 2020. We'll have to see what happens. But game of the year, what are you rolling with, Jack?
I went with Philly and Toronto Game 7. One of the more epic endings of a game, maybe in the history of the league. It was just absolutely phenomenal. I think you can make an argument for a few other games, but due to the stakes that were on the line, the drama, the emotion, the emotional outpour, it was one of the more epic moments of basketball that I think we'll ever remember and look back on.
So that was the game I picked as well, but I'm gonna be different because I figured someone would pick that. I'm actually gonna go. I can't remember what game it was. If it was game 5 or game 6.
You going OKC Portland?
No, Warriors Rockets. When without Durant, Curry had 0 points in the first half, and then dropped 33 points in the second half, and that was the game without Durant. And it felt like that was the game where if the Rockets won, maybe they would win the series. Curry had a terrible first half, and then has 33 in the second half. And I think he definitely had double digits in the fourth quarter. But that to me was one of the crazier games, aside from Kawhi's game winner.
I went with my own personal interest here. I went with the Nets' 28-point comeback against the Kings, where D'Lo dropped 44.
Yeah, that I remember doing. I think I've said this on the Buzz and other podcasts before. I remember I just finished work because obviously it was on the West Coast, and Nick and I always chat in the DMs during games, little moments here and there. Even if I'm at work, I'm always prioritizing Brooklyn Nets content over everything. Clearly. But I remember, I'm like, oh, wow, this is getting kind of close. I'm like, oh, it's over. And then work had finished. So it was like 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. here, Melbourne time, Eastern Standard Time. And the Nets are coming back. I'm like, all right, let's get my laptop. We're supposed to be having, meetings and doing our planning. And all my, team members are like, just go watch the game, Jack. Go in the office. And I'm watching it. I'm yelling. I'm getting crazy. On the podcast, me and Will are going absolute hype. I get certainly emotionally invested with the Brooklyn Nets. And that was one of the moments where I sort of said, I mentioned the top storylines of 2019, the re-emergence of the Brooklyn Nets. That for me was probably one of the key moments where it's just like, the Nets are here. You take some notice of us, and D'Lo is certainly getting a lot more credit that he certainly deserves now that he's in Golden State. But what he did that season for the Brooklyn Nets is going to be a special season. And I've said to Nick off wax that one day, if the Nets do win a title, I'd love to write a book about, the sort of start and where it all began with Sean Marks and Coach Kenny. And that season specifically was where I think we saw the glimpses of what the Brooklyn Nets can be in terms of being a really sustainable and successful organization.
Yeah, it was a huge game, 27 points for D'Lo in the fourth quarter. And just to come back there and they don't win that game, they might not make the postseason. So it was a big game and really important. And like you said, Jack, it kind of was a signal for the Nets becoming relevant again in the NBA.
Yeah.
But we've been talking 2019. We're going to talk all-decade team. How do you guys want to do this? You want to each give our 5, or do you want to start with one position and go from there?
I think we're all going to have the same players, surely. Are we?
I mean, I would think so for the most part. I mean, Steph Curry, James Harden, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and then who'd you guys roll with at center?
I didn't necessarily have a center. I just had Kawhi Leonard in there, just as the 5 best players of the decade.
Yeah. I didn't do what Jack did. I did forwards, guards, and my guards were different because I didn't put James Harden, and James Harden should be in it, I guess. I went with Curry, Wade, LeBron, Durant, but I guess Wade's more of Wade's like an in-betweener because early 2010s, 11, 12, 13, yes, LeBron was the best player, but Wade was still really freaking good.
Yeah.
But I guess it would still probably be James Harden because also I wanted to say Kobe. For center,
I thought you were gonna pick Kobe. Yeah.
Dude, no.
For center, I put Demarcus Cousins though.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
Because I mean, even though he sucked, the Kings sucked. He was arguably the best center for 3 years, just wasting away in Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, if I went the way Jack went with top 5 players, I'd go with Kawhi, but I went with center. I went with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Interesting.
because I think like almost since Anthony Davis has been in the NBA, he's been in consideration for one of the top 5 bigs, and his two-way ability isn't really matched on a consistency basis because Joel Embiid just missed so much time, and he's still young in his career. Jokic has only been around a couple, years now, and then the defense isn't there. But Anthony Davis has been a monster player for a long time. And
I should have went with Andre Drummond.
You got him pretty high in your top 50, by the way, man.
Rudy Gobert probably has the opportunity to. Yeah, Andre Drummond's a stud. It's not his fault the Pistons suck.
Yeah, but like, how much does he impact winning basketball is a question for Andre Drummond. But we can save that for a top 50 episode. I think moving on from all decade, I'm going to pass it over to Jack. What are we rolling with, Jack?
We've got the BMS, Buissink Manuell scale. For those that don't know, obviously it's the most convoluted scale in the history of sports entertainment. You scale it. I give you a statement. You go, is it an alternative fact? I don't believe it. Is it a Twitter fact? A little bit of validity. Is it a Wikipedia fact? Yeah, it's got a bit more substance. Or is it a straight up fact? So first statement I've got for you lads: the Miami Heat are a legitimate contender to come out of the East.
It's a Twitter fact.
Oh, that's low. The second, bro.
I think it's a Twitter to come out of the East.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, they're beaten. They've only lost once at home, and then
they're beating out of the East and beating Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it.
Twitter fact.
I'm going Twitter fact too.
Cool, they're not. Cool. No one in the Eastern Conference currently constructed. Do I think with a healthy Bucks team has the opportunity to beat them and come out of the East and make the NBA Finals? I think all of these teams have a flaw. Like the Heat, for example, I think they're missing a guard. I think the Celtics are missing a center. I think the Raptors just aren't. They're a piece away. I think the Sixers have a shooting issue. Like I don't think any of those teams right now, I would say, can beat the Milwaukee Bucks.
I would say the Sixers could, just because I think they match up so well with Giannis, and that is the only reason why they have the best chance. I think that the Sixers, but I do also agree that they really lack shooting, and I think Al Horford, he dropped quite a bit in my top 50, and I think he hasn't fit in well. And you're paying nearly $30 million to a guy who's essentially a backup center and plays his best minutes when Joel Embiid isn't out on the floor. I think the Sixers do match up well, but when they do get to the eventual finals, if they were to make it, then I think the Lakers or the Clippers, I think they would both. I think that the Sixers would personally get destroyed, whereas I think Milwaukee would put up a really good fight against both of those teams.
Yeah, I think the Sixers will be a lot better come postseason time because I think they have to try really hard to win games in the regular season, and they don't really want to because we've talked about in the past. They have these forwards and even the guards they have are a little bit bigger, chasing guys across the court on a regular basis. It's just a lot of effort to put in to win games against some of these smaller, quicker teams when they just don't have it. But I agree with Kory, a Twitter fact. I think Miami, if they make a trade for somebody like a Drew Holiday or an all-star level player, then they do have a real shot at getting out of the East.
Totally fair. Lads, I've got the two more for you. D'Angelo Russell has taken another step forward in Golden State.
Twitter fact? I almost want to say alternative fact. I don't think I've seen anything outlandishly better from D'Angelo Russell. He is another year older. He had another, a 30-point game last night or the night before, hitting some eight three-pointers or some big-time three-pointers. I don't think he's much better than he was last year, personally.
I feel like it's an incomplete because his team is so bad, it's almost impossible to tell if he's improved. I think in some extents you look at him, though, and you see like the game last night where he's just continuing to get more confidence in the league. So I guess I'll go with a wiki fact because I think there is some, you want to put some stake in getting more confident in the league and feeling like you belong, and I think D'Lo's done that a little bit this season.
I would never thought I'd say I probably agree with Kory more on this podcast, but I think I agree with Kory more, and I think I'm only saying that partly because I agree with some of what you're saying, Nick, in terms of it is a bit of an incomplete injuries and, it's hard to judge on whatever this Golden State team is. But I think D'Lo did a lot of this stuff in Brooklyn. I don't think he was just necessarily getting the fanfare and highlights on House of Highlights and, Ball is Life and all these sort of things. He was absolutely, gargantuan for us in terms of leading us to the playoffs when Karis LeVert got injured. But now that he's in Golden State, a bit more hyped of a market. Obviously, there's the established brand there. One of the biggest franchises of the decade, if not one of the biggest sports franchises of the past 2000s. So for me, it's more that he's getting the fanfare. He's always been a sublime scorer. I haven't necessarily seen, the passing game as much from D'Lo because I think he's forced to actually score a little bit more, and his teammates just aren't as good at shooting and aren't as good at making shots. But D'Lo is going to continue to get better. I just think now I haven't necessarily think he's taken that big of a step forward.
I think it's also harder to look like you're better when your teammates are worse. No matter how good you are, like if your teammates are worse, it's just going to put more pressure on you defensively regardless.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess, lads, I'll end with this one with a Los Angeles Laker forward. Kyle Kuzma will be traded by the Los Angeles Lakers this season.
I feel like I'm stuck in Twitter fact. Twitter fact.
There we go.
I feel like there is plenty of possibility and speculation to move Kyle Kuzma because of their up and down play, and I don't see anything defensively that stands out. And offensively, just to me, is an inconsistent spark plug off the bench at this point in time. Has been playing better as of late. So I think it basically depends on whether or not he gets on LeBron James' last nerve.
Yeah, I think I might lean with a wiki fact here because I think like Kuzma's a guy that if they want to add another piece, he'd be the only sweetener they really have. Like they don't have a ton of first round picks moving forward. So if they're going to give a team something to entice them to make a trade, it's going to be Kuzma. And I think usually when you're a championship level team and a piece like Kuzma's kind of been, obviously he's been injured, but it doesn't look like he's a perfect fit with the roster they do have. I think it would make sense to trade him. I'd go Wiki because I don't think it's locked in, but I would not be surprised if he was moved.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's probably maybe making this an even stronger on the sort of scale is the fact that he is on a rookie scale contract, so you can't necessarily, you'd have to package him with something else to actually get something of worth in return. And, I think that he's been really, really good of late. And in terms of, I think we all watched a lot of Los Angeles Lakers basketball, see a lot of highlights, see all the stats and here and there. I think he is part of their best lineups and, closing lineups, Kuzma, Davis, LeBron, checking maybe a KCP and an Alex Caruso. I think that's probably one of their better lineups. You can probably put Danny Green in there, depending on the matchup, depending on what sort of shooting you want. But I think Kyle Kuzma has provided something for them of late, and I think he's starting to prove himself. And maybe if his trainer finally shuts up, he might actually stay in Los Angeles for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And like you said, Jack, I think like he'll be packaged with somebody else, and that'll be the offer that they kind of search on the trade market and see who's available. Because I think Kuzma has shown some promise, but I think they'd probably want someone a little bit more polished, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah, I agree.
Kory, what are you hitting us with?
All right, just doing a little believe it or not. The Boston Celtics are the only team in the NBA that has 3 players averaging 20 or more points per game. Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown are all averaging over 20, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Yeah, I believe it. I think it's going to happen. That's pretty much how they're going to have success. Hayward looks like he's going to be in and out of the lineup. He's dealing with a couple different injuries. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum just look extra confident this season in taking that next step, specifically Jaylen Brown. And Kemba's obviously Kemba.
Yeah. Another Celtics one. This is a couple days old now, so I think the record is slightly different. Since their opening night loss to Philly, the Celtics are 21-6. They haven't lost a single game by more than 6 points. They have won 8 games by 15 or more points. They have the 5th best offense, or 5th best NBA rating offense, 2nd best defensive rating, and are outscoring teams by 9 points per game, believe it or not.
I believe it somewhat. I think that the Celtics are a very, very good team as currently constructed. I like their coaching. Obviously, we all know about the sort of center issues. But I think for me, when Gordon Hayward is healthy, it provides a new dimension to this lineup that just is. And I think that in today's day and age, I think we've said this on podcasts before, that the wing is such an important position. And Gordon Hayward is a really versatile wing, almost like a playmaking wing in a lot of ways. And you have a Jason Tatum who's a bit more of a scorer. Jaylen Brown's just sort of two-way guy. And Kemba is sort of that real ancillary sort of piece like he was in sort of, and he's just fitted in so nicely there in Boston. And obviously, might chuck in whoever it might be, Daniel Tice or, Enes Kanter, depending on certain lineups. But I don't think that the Celtics, we spoke about a little bit before in terms of how the Toronto Raptors were really risky and bold in terms of trying to really take that step forward and take a championship. Danny Ainge had those opportunities as well, and I think he sort of let it play out. And I think that is, I think both scenarios would have been fine because we're seeing what Jaylen Brown is now, what Jason Tatum is now. these guys are turning into very, very good players. But are they going to win you a championship? Time will tell. But with how Giannis is dominating the East right now, we could see Giannis turn into the new LeBron and go to finals after finals after finals. The Sixers, I think, are a step above them just because I think that they have the physicality. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, you could argue, are a better duo in terms of talent-wise. And in terms of that starting five, the physicality and the defense they bring is almost a standard above. So I like the Celtics. I don't love the Celtics.
Yeah, I don't believe they'll be able to keep up this pace the entire season. I think they'll be a very good team, but I think things have gone really well for them. One thing that works out well for the Celtics is they have a lot of different pieces. They have a lot of, pieces they can put on the floor that do different things, and Brad Stevens has done a great job of kind of matching them up. Like Enes Kanter has some positive advanced numbers because Stevens has used him in the right situations, where in the past teams kind of leave him out there to get exposed. Brad Stevens has kind of hit him in the right areas.
Yeah. Next up, Tobias Harris. This is since his three-point shooting slump has ended, and this was on November 15th, technically, when his shooting slump ended. He's been averaging 21.4 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, on 50% shooting from the field, 41% shooting from three on 4.6 attempts, for a true shooting percentage of 59.1. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm a big Tobias Harris believer. I think that he obviously in Philadelphia right now, there is a lot of scoring burden on his shoulders. I think that despite that the talent on that roster, it isn't the most seamless fit. But Tobias Harris, I think what's underrated, and it's hard to sort of quantify as well there, Kory, is the defense that he's shown. I think he has always been an okay defender. But in the Philadelphia right now, obviously there's a lot less asked of him, and I think he's showing plenty on that end of the floor. Not necessarily that he is an all-defensive player like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are, and maybe even Al Horford on his best day, but he's doing enough on that end of the floor. And I think that the balance in his game is probably at a point where we probably saw in his heyday in Detroit and in Los Angeles. I think that he's playing some really good basketball, so I believe it.
I believe the stats. I don't believe the efficiency. I think that'll drop, but I think they need him to be that go-to scorer like Jac mentioned. He's taking a big load, and they need him to be aggressive. I think at times he'll have bad shooting nights, but he'll still get the numbers.
Yeah, they need him to be aggressive shooting-wise. He's because of how Ben Simmons plays, he's got to be aggressive offensively with his touches. So this is as of 6 o'clock yesterday, so I'm sure these numbers slightly changed after last night's games. Most total points in the clutch this season. These are the top 10 point scorers in the clutch time. Chris Paul, number 1 with 80. Zach LaVine, number 2 with 78. Donovan Mitchell, 3. Joel Embiid, 4. James Harden, 5th. Nikola Jokic, 6. Devontae Graham, 7th. Spencer Dinwiddie, 8. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 9. And Joe Harris, 10th.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that is right. I saw that stat, and I was absolutely... I was waiting for Kory to bring up number 10, who should really be number 1. We all know that Joe Harris is the best player on that list by a country mile. I think
God.
that... Hey, chill out. All right? You deal with this on the buzz. You're going to deal with this on the outlet as well, mate. You invited me on. But in general, I think that those players are incredible clutch scorers. But in terms of clutch time players, I would still rather have the ball in some other players' hands. It just happens to be that teams like the Lakers, teams like the Clippers, are blowing teams out for a lot of the time and aren't having, to rely on a Kawhi Leonard to hit them a bucket, to rely on a LeBron James to make a play for them. So James Harden, playing some incredible basketball. Devontae Graham is just a revelation, probably my most improved player. But I would still say that the players in that list, while amazing, there are some guys who aren't on that list that I would prefer to have the ball in their hands, and I think are better clutch time players.
Yeah, Jack's definitely right about that aspect, that there's more clutch players in the NBA. I think there's a couple things in common for a lot of guys in that list. Either their team is in a lot of close games, so they have a lot of opportunities to get clutch baskets, or they're clearly the number 1 option on their team, like a guy like Devontae Graham or Zach LaVine, who's going to get all the clutch touches. So I think the list will pretty much maintain, because I don't think any of those teams are going to get a lot better. They're probably going to be consistently in close games, and then the other guys are going to consistently have a lot of touches in the clutch.
Yeah. 2 more left. So this one is actually, Jack mentioned this on a couple pods ago. The number 1 defense over the past 10 games. This is as of today at 11 o'clock, so this is fresh. Number 1 defense over the past 10 games of all teams in the NBA? The Chicago Bulls. Believe it or not.
God, no. I was when I the reason why I remember jumping on the outlet and I had a few studs of the week and I remember having to narrow it down. I'm like, well, the most shocking stud here is the fact that the Chicago Bulls are playing some insane defense, and I think they have quality defenders. You know, Tomas Satoransky, I like Thaddeus Young, even though he's now apparently on the trade block and the Clippers are looking for him. I think he'd be a nice little pickup for whatever team. You know, Wendell Carter Jr. is an incredibly talented player on that end of the floor, and Chris Dunn has been outstanding, and it's always been an outstanding defender. It's always just been the offensive side of the ball that's been a worry for him. So they have quality defenders on this roster, and when they are engaged on that end of the floor, they are insane. It's just that you would think that with guys like Zach LaVine and Larry Markkinen, who aren't necessarily world beaters on that end of the floor, that they would it would balance itself out to be a little more of an equilibrium. But I don't believe it. But, you know, for now, it's like the Washington Wizards being one of the top offenses in the league. It's not going to last.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's probably correlated to pace or just like them slowing it down and just kind of grinding games out and making it as physical as possible. Because I think they do have some defensive talent, but it's not like this is a team that has lockdown defense. I think, you know, obviously Zach LaVine struggled on that end of the floor and Lauri Markkinen hasn't been good like Jack mentioned. So it's like, it's not something that's going to continue the rest of the year. If it did, I'd be extremely impressed.
Yeah, I don't believe it myself. So next up, this is the 25 most impactful players of the decade by wins added. I'm just going to give you the top 10. I figure that's a good way to close that, to believe it or not. So first, we have LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Chris Paul, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kyle Lowry, Dwight Howard, Draymond Green, Paul George in the top 10 of most impactful players of the decade by wins added. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I think I would believe that. I think obviously there are some names that you see Draymond Green is like, what? Well, I think Draymond Green's probably been one of the best defensive players of this decade. So you take how dominant he is on that end of the floor, I think it makes a lot of sense. And obviously, you know, you list your top three there, Kory. Those are probably the top three players of the decade, you know, in some order or another. I know I'm going to be chatting about it on JBT tomorrow with Nick Buissink. But, you know, I'm not surprised and I believe that pretty much wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid list. I think there's probably a couple names that aren't on there, but some of their teams might not have been as successful or they didn't have a good early to the 2010s. So I'm happy with the list. And like Jack said, the top three is the top three, and I think that's the most important thing.
I think Chris Paul being fourth is like surprising because I didn't even consider him for my all-decade team.
I think you just forget how good Chris Paul's been. Like, he's just been so good this entire decade. Like, on the Clippers, they consistently won games on a regular basis. When he got to Houston, I think, they're a 60-win team. So it's like, he just wins games. He's a really, really good player. And that's what kind of sucks for Chris Paul and his whole narrative that he's never going to win a championship. It's like, it doesn't really have a ton to do with Chris Paul. It has more to do with the teams around him.
Sure.
But that wraps it up, and now we talked enough about 2019. We're going to talk a little bit about 2020. Do you guys want to talk about the general NBA first, a specific team, or a specific player? I'll let you decide.
Let's go general NBA.
Yeah. All right. What do you want to see in 2020 in the general NBA?
I've got two things. I want a Lakers-Clippers Western Conference Finals and a Lakers-Bucks NBA Finals.
In the general NBA speaking, I want to see either or, maybe both, Karl-Anthony Towns and Bradley Beal traded.
Ooh.
That's what I want to see. Either or, maybe both. That's what I want to see in 2020.
That's a really good one. I didn't even think about the trade aspect. But I agree with Jack. I'd like to see a Lakers-Bucks Finals, Giannis versus LeBron, maybe his last hurrahs being such an elite player. But another thing I'd like to see is a spice up for the regular season. We heard about some of the things they offered in, you know, the pitch to the Players Association. I hope to see one of those things. I don't care exactly what it is, but I think spicing up the NBA regular season would be fun.
Yeah.
All right, team related. Jack, what do you got?
I just said a healthy Nets team for a prolonged period. That's all I want. Health. I know I'm pretty sure on our Brooklyn Buzz Christmas-themed episode, gift-themed episode, you know, we could have done that for every single player and every single player on the sidelines. But, you know, I think I've said this ad hoc on so many podcasts on the OTG network that health is just, injuries are the worst thing about the NBA when we see our superstars not on the court. You know, obviously Stephen Curry not being out there, Kevin Durant not being out there, Klay Thompson not being out there. You know, the whole ratings debacle that surrounds that. Imagine the NBA right now if we had like Zion flying as he is, Giannis continuing to dominate, but then you had Steph dominating in Golden State, KD making the Brooklyn Nets a real contender. I think it just adds so much when you have the best players always out there. And I think for me, more than the regular season, it's always going to be about, and I think, you know, the Baxter Holmes article that came out start of this year or midway through this year, just before the season, about how players are managed, you know, through the youth ranks, I think it's going to be incredibly important because we've already seen Zion break down, and that might be just because he is a physiological absolute marvel in terms of what he does and how he moves as just a human being. But we need to worry about the talent that's being brought into the league, making sure that they are healthy and they have the chance to have long, sustainable careers, because that is going to benefit the product, and that is the product when it comes to what we watch and what we consume within the NBA.
So I went with a similar topic line when it comes to health. I want to see the Indiana Pacers healthy. I want to see Victor Oladipo back out there. I want to see Brogdon with healthy fingers. And I want to see what my team looks like, similar to your guys' team, with all of their pieces together on the floor.
Yeah, I think we all agree on the same thing. At least by the end of 2020, I want to see a fully healthy net squad and just a taste of what they can be at peak levels. I don't expect to see it, 2020, maybe in 2021 in the early months. But obviously, it's kind of sad that we all are hoping our teams are healthy because they're missing their best player. But player-specific stuff you guys want to see in 2020.
I want to see playoff Kyrie, Nick. I mean, playoff Kyrie, obviously not playoff Kyrie from 2019. Obviously, that wasn't the version that we know and love. But, playoff Kyrie, who hit one of the best shots, if not for me. And I'll be, recounting this on JVT as well. Subscribe to that, Full Access Hoops and everything else on iTunes and Spotify. But I want to see the best player version of Kyrie. I want to see him dominate, given the opportunity to just go, bang, this is my town, this is my team, and I'll make it a statement here, and I'm back, and I'm Kyrie Irving. And for those that may have forgotten, this is what I can do.
I went with the easy one, and I'm glad you went net related, because then it leaves LeBron James wide open for me. I want to see LeBron James in the playoffs. I want to see LeBron James win an NBA title at least one more time in my lifetime. I want to see LeBron James get his. And I know some people don't want to see LeBron James win because he's already won several times. I'm all for it. I want to see the greatest player of all time, or at least the greatest player that I've watched in my lifetime, win another ring.
Yeah, if KD's not healthy, that's cool. LeBron wants to win 2020, but don't talk to me about 2021. Kind of similar to Jack. I want to see Kyrie back at it into his highest peak form, winning games at Barclays Center in the playoff. And then obviously related to what we just mentioned, we want to see all the elite players back in the court, from Kevin Durant to Steph Curry to Victor Oladipo, just a lot of these great names. And then also kind of what happens with Zion. Are we going to see him miss the entire season of the 2019-20 season? Or is he going to play early in 2020? Is he going to have some issues similar to Markelle Fultz? Like, there's just a lot of storylines pertaining to him because there was so much hype going to this year.
Yeah.
And if you are a Zion fan, head to dsginjury.com/offtheglass and you can get an awesome Zion Williamson t-shirt. Plenty of fire merch there.
OTG NBA 5 will save you $5 too, so make sure you use that. But guys, anything else you want to touch on 2019 or 2020 other than going to Design Tree and grabbing great t-shirts?
I think my New Year's resolution is to be nicer to Kory. I think I've done okay today. I think I'm on the right track. I had to I think forcing myself in the last episode put me in a decent mindset, but I think I'm baby steps.
You're finding a balance.
Yeah. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you're down this path of enlightenment, Jack. And you're finding some peace and harmony inside your inner soul, so you're not lashing out to me on this podcast. I don't know. 2019 was a pretty good year. We all have our challenges and years. Our teams may struggle. You guys having your two best players with injuries to constant nonsense that circulates around Kyrie Irving. 2020, just more peace, love, and happiness. How about that?
More positive vibes. I'm all about the vibes in 2020. But a big thanks to you two for doing an excellent job, not only on the podcast, on your own podcast, and everything you do for OTG. Big thanks to the OTG staff for all the work they did in 2019. And like I mentioned before, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, OTGbasketball.com, and YouTube. But I do have to squeeze in one more question. Who's the NBA champion in 2020?
The Los Angeles Lakers.
In 2020. Oh, yeah, no, that's next year. I forgot where we were. Yeah, Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh, wait, no, I'm going to go Clippers. Sorry, Clippers.
We're gonna go. Oh well, we're gonna go with the LA sweep. I'm gonna go with the Lakers here too.
Cool.
And that wraps it up. Last episode of 2019 in the books.
Peace out, knuckleheads.
That's what you got to do.